Hi, my name is Catherine Zeckley, and today we are in Nirupa Umapathy's beautiful apartment in Jersey City to talk a little bit about a project that she created called Salons for Life. Hi, Nirupa.
Hi, Catherine. Welcome.
Thank you. So what is a salon?
Besides a place where you cut your hair,
Besides the place where you
the salons are actually, the project started out as a tip of the hat back to the salons that were run by some incredible women during the French Enlightenment.
Okay.
The salons were very much part of a period during the 17th to the 18th century where they became these serious outlets for a community in discourse, subsequently creating what is called a network of ideas.
Because these women probably didn't have access to education, right?
Great question. I think the French Enlightenment salons specifically were what I took from, because without access to university education, as you just said, they literally brought the university into their living rooms. They invited artists, philosophers, thinkers, and politicians, men of letters, women of letters as well. And the idea was to bring this network of ideas into a space away from actually the public gaze, away from the institutional gaze. And it became a very powerful and critical backbone to the Republic of Letters.
So why did you feel that this was a format that you wanted to endeavor into?
You know what, the salons actually, like any creative process, like any creative project, I think they came about as a culmination of gathering ideas from the new state, the new age of learning that we find ourselves in. Obviously, we now live in an age where we have massive open online courses. You have access to education in multiple formats that are often part of the shared economy.
But
right?
on a personal level, why did you want to?
It's a great question. Actually, I'm a nerd for life, okay?
Yeah.
And I have an undergrad education, but you know, I have been a constant learner since I graduated from university. Everything that I pretty much have learned to this day actually has been self-taught by putting myself into a real-life environment.
Do you find that that's the way that people learn best?
Learning by doing, I think, is a very critical way of learning. You know, for pedagogy, I think to have experiential learning where you literally are putting to test something that goes beyond theory and you're gathering real-life insights, I think is extraordinarily powerful.
And is that the format that you want to bring into a salon?
Yeah, the salons are basically, thank you. Salons are essentially 3-hour co-learning retreats, and I'll explain why the word co. And these are for individuals that are invested in their ongoing learning, growth, and development. And so people get together in the privacy of a living room and are able to hash out a particular theme for the evening.
What is the mission that you would say of these salons that are co-created?
It's really to bring back home the power of the individual voice. And it's really to bring back home the power of the empowered individual. And
what is an empowered individual?
An empowered individual for me is someone who's very much tapped into the wisdom of their own lived experiences. And an empowered individual is one who is able to use the spine of their own stories, which actually are the organic underbed of your everyday living, and to be able to share that story to create a map of collected stories in the living room.
So what would this empowered individual look like after one of your salons?
I think that anyone that walks into the salon is someone that is probably leaving behind the pressures of their daily directives, whether it's family, whether it is the demands of a corporate job, whether it is other competing claims in your life. You walk in, you regroup, you replenish, you are exposed to something very immersive because you're in the presence of the arts or a modality that focuses on storytelling. You get a chance to actually center yourself on the power of that empathic experience.
One's individual.
One's individual, right? And then what happens is the space is activated by a storyteller, and then it kind of, the ball gets passed to the audience. If you and I were sitting in a salon, it's an actively facilitated format, it's an actively co-created format, but at the end of it, the second half of the salon is about you, the individual, speaking up through your story, the wisdom, the teaching moment that you have for the world.
So why is it important that individuals share their stories like this? What does an empowered individual actually do and contribute to the world?
The expertise of their lived experience, such that we are able to create a map of the new humanities. the math of the new social studies. I think we live in a culture where there's a huge emphasis on experts that talk at you. There's talking heads that are talking to the pundits, like from the television screen or whatever medium that you want to talk about. And we've really forgotten that pretty much everything that you need to live a rich and extraordinary life actually lives right within you. And part of it is about tapping into that rich history of where you come from, your point of origin, and all the different pathways that you have touched, including where you live and where you work, and to bring that to the fore to reclaim the expertise of that experience.
So what are the implications of this reclamation of one's individual story? What are the implications of sharing it with others and learning how to communicate it efficiently with others? So what are the implications of one of these salons?
I like to think of it as like the 1 minute TED for the individual. You get up there, you use the moment to showcase your teaching moment. It also gives you, in your virtue of having your teaching moment, I think it really kind of reflects back very powerfully into the incredible complexity of your own lived experiences. And in the process of sharing your story, you're putting yourself out there, Catherine. I mean, it's a space of extreme vulnerability, but it's also a space of extreme openness. So what you get to do by sharing story is actually, you're creating this chain reaction of empathy and being heard and being seen, and in turn holding space for someone else in that room who can then be heard and be seen.
I mean, that's pretty powerful though. So how do you even go about formatting one of these salons to bring this about?
Yeah, I thought long and hard about it, and it's interesting because you and I have a history of yoga, right?
Right.
And it's a very highly human-centric practice, right? Any yoga class starts with this idea of centering yourself into your body, but it also goes into this deep space of empathy, right? And you are in the shared experience where we're guided by a common intention. So the salons actually, frankly, start with that kind of ritual setting, where I essentially will invite in a storyteller or a headliner.
And what modalities have you used in the past?
It's largely in the entire gamut of the arts. So visual arts, a lot of performing arts, a lot of music, a lot of dance, anything that basically bypasses the prefrontal cortex, so to speak, or the hyper-analytical brain, to go into a space where we are activating our senses, our memories.
So in that way, it's probably not like a workshop or that sort of typical format that you would get.
It can and cannot be. Let me explain what the difference is, I think, in the way I see as a workshop versus not a workshop. So first, there's definitely some aspect of immersive storytelling. So you actually get 25 minutes to transport yourself into something. It's as if you're watching a performance, just it happens to unfold in a living room. The second thing is that it's actively facilitated, which means workshops are also facilitated. It's actively facilitated, which means the ball of the conversation keeps getting
so it's
passed
not
around.
somebody talking at you.
No, it's far from it. It is a space of shared authority.
And is that how you found that individuals can contribute their story, even when you have some sort of presenter or artist activating the space?
Yes. The presenter or the artist serves the purpose of activating and ritualizing the space and getting us to a point where we're able to walk out of the real life setting that we just walked out of into, right? So it's essentially creating a space where you have forgotten for a second the world that you've just left behind. And that's kind of what I really look to my headliners or the storytellers to do. They also, picking an artist is very important. They have to be those that know that they're not on a pedestal. This is not a moment for as much as it's a showcase of the artist and their story, this is not entirely about them.
So it's
they are
really
one of
empowering everybody, like you said.
It's a very democratic.
To be their own expert of their own story.
And their lived experience. And the people that are ideal participants in a salon are those that are willing to come and lead with their story and their intention, but they equally are comfortable holding space for others with a diversity of stories and perspectives.
So I'm curious about the spaces that you go into, because you've mentioned living rooms, but this seems like a format that could be adaptive.
Absolutely.
Right. Where do you see salons being successful and empowering the individual, and how does that relate, that space, for the cultivation of individual story? How does that relate to the whole?
Love the question. The prototype of this entire project started out in the living room in the vein of the French Enlightenment salons, but it largely was also just a format and a method. The salons are eminently fungible to any space that aspires to be human-centric.
So you create each one individually.
Everything is
for
curated
whatever
to
is
the
required.
needs. Every salon is curated to the need of the host, the desire of the host, what they want to have, the desired outcomes be for the community that they're bringing in to that salon. So this would go back to, like, let's say that we do this in a workplace setting. If I sat down with a sponsor, I would probably sit down and unpack what their desired outcomes for their employees might be. And
why is it important for an organization to have empowered individual employees?
I think ultimately, if you think about the workplace, you want it to be a human-centric space and a human-centric experience that maximizes the flow of individual employees. To get into the point of flow, I think we need to get very close to understanding where the individual contributor is. Away from the larger corporate and institutional agenda, you need to get to a point where you're holding space for an individual to be creative, to be free-thinking, to be able to understand what is it about their unique voice that can contribute to the larger corporate mission.
And why now? Why is it important now to do this?
For multiple reasons, right? I think that first we are sitting in the midst of tectonic demographic shifts, economy shifts, so we have the gig economies and the shared economies in play. We are seeing this sort of push and pull between the authority of big institutions versus the power of collectives that are sort of organically formed as groups of communities that are probably harnessed by intention. That's one. The second is that we are dealing with an age of intense digital information, where information is coming at you from different angles, and the aspect of curation and knowing what is relevant is very important. We also have moved away from the idea of producing widgets. This is an economy of ideas. This is an economy of community, and it's not about what you know, it's about who you know and how you're harnessing the collective knowledge of who you know, and how we bring that together to foster innovative thinking, to foster creative thinking, to foster adaptive thinking, right? But to be in that mind frame, to be in that mindset, you need to be part of a community that is supported in its intention and its ability to be empathic and human-centric.
And probably it helps too that it's human to human. There's something about art that is very flesh, you have to feel it. It's not like the digital community.
Yeah.
Where that can be highly curated but also kind of disconnected. Is that one of your aims as well?
The fundamental human trait is what? Is to have a sense of belonging and to foster a sense of connectivity, right? Of course, we are connected through multiple media now, to your point, but nothing actually takes away from the extreme sublimation of being in a living room, flesh to flesh, in the presence of an audience where it's analog, where I'm listening to you and you're listening to me, and that feedback loop, I think, is extraordinarily iterative and interactive in a way that I don't think you're going to get even in the most sort of well-facilitated digital forums, of which I'm a big fan of, just to be clear. So it is about, in fact, I would say this, we live in the world of the digital, but part of bringing back the analog as these little capsules is to actually go back and foster the richness of how we can go back analog so we can make better use of those digital communities as well. It has to constantly be an interplay, right? Because you want to be tapped into communities in the living room, but we also want to be leveraging the distributive economies of being part of a larger network. You want to meet that person in Chiang Mai as you do someone in Jersey City, correct? Mm-hmm. But to really bring the essence of you experiencing your moment of storytelling and your sense of creativity in flesh, I just think there's something fundamentally so grounding and embodied about that you walk out of this salon feeling like you just had your 1-minute TED. It's just a different feeling. It's a different kind of mantra that you're taking out to the real world to be repurposed again.
So is that the life element in the Salons for Life? Tell me a little bit about
that. Oh, I love that. I love that question, actually. It's so interesting. I mean, everything about my new journey here, away from sort of 14 years in an organized workspace, has been about integrating a life of work and life. I used to think about it as work life in my past, and now I think about it as life work. Life being the leading indicator of all the things that end up being the portfolio of your experiences, and work being a part of it, but that's just one expression, right? So The For Life has many implications for the salon. I believe that the salons are also actively unpacking what I call a curriculum, where it's just enabling you to be a self-directed leader of your own life.
But you have a process, because curriculum to me implies process. Yeah.
The three legs of the stool of the curriculum are creative currency, because I feel creativity is fundamentally a universal common denominator. We all carry it. We all are creative beings. Financial acuity and mind-body energy. The latter two, I use them from the standpoint of unpacking resource economics, because the fundamental thesis is that for you to unlock your highest contribution, not only do you want to be in touch with the deepest and the core aspects of yourself, but you want to be resourced responsibly. And I view the body compass, I view the mind-body compass to be a very important kind of asset that is kind of sitting in your corner, alongside like things like money and a community and a network that are going to then help you unlock this capacity to be a change agent. And together, when we unlock that capacity, we can actually be a force for good.
I was going to say, what does that change to you?
I think it's both individual, and then it ripples out to a community level, it ripples out to an organizational level, it ripples out to at the level of the nation and beyond. In fact, like if you look at change as happening top down, which is the way we've been fed, which like policy happens at the level of the nation or nations, and then it goes down to institution, and then at the level of the household, the individual or the family. I'm flipping that equation a little bit, the syntax, and I'm saying in the salons we start bottom up, which is going to be at the household, at the individual, at the group level, and then we bubble out the insights and the power of such shared experiences out into bringing that into something larger, which could be your workplace. It could be another institutional format. It's your community. And then the power of these sort of micro-sharing, shared experiences is that this is how little movements are created, right? You're creating hubs of influence, and then before you know it, it becomes part of the larger consciousness.
Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.